Go ahead. Call the meeting to order. Start with a roll call. McKee here. Lanterman.
Here.
Friedrich.
Here.
Barenkamp.
Here.
Nichols.
Here.
Alright, everyone's here. We'll move on to we have two scheduled items today for the work session. Who's going to take the lead on introing this? JCB.
I sure can. So tonight we've got two things on the agenda. The first item is going to be our Three Rivers friends are presenting on the Weaver Lake Regional Trail. The second item will begin around 5:45, and we will be working with HKGI, who we are currently working with on the Heritage Park project, and we will be discussing wayfinding and then a parks and trails plan. So with that, I'll hand it off to Marge Beard, our commissioner with Three Rivers.
Awesome. Thank you very much. Good evening. My name is Marge Beard. Can you hear me? And I serve on the Three Rivers Park Board as the commissioner on the board who represents Western Hennepin County, and that includes the city of Corcoran. So I represent the residents of Corcoran on our park board. And it is my pleasure to be here tonight. I've been coming to Corcoran for over 6 years, working on different things. Most recently, we worked on the Diamond Lake Trail, which is known as the North-South Trail. And that was all during COVID, so that was kind of an interesting process. And I'm very glad to be here because now we get to begin a process to work on an east-west trail. And I thought a lot about this, and it takes a long time to figure out. I don't want to take any baggies thunder, but it takes a long time to go through the process to identify a trail, design a trail, acquire, the land use, and then get the money and then actually build the trail. But you must begin somewhere, right? And today is the day we begin. So it really is a huge milestone, and I'm very glad to be here the day we begin to work on this trail. So my thanks for your time and attention, and I'm happy to turn over to Maggie, who will take you through all the details.
Thank you.
Hi everyone, my name is Maggie Hagron. I am a planner at Three Rivers Park District. Thank you for having us tonight. We really appreciate you fitting us in. I know it's a packed agenda. And as Marge mentioned, I'm here to provide an update on the Weaver Lake Regional Trail Long Range Plan as we kick it off this spring. And then we would also like to leave today with some guidance and or parameters around the very preliminary lines we have on the map for possible routes through your community. Okay, great, thank you. Okay, so the entire Weaver Lake Regional Trail Search Corridor, which is circled here in red on the map, is just over 20 miles spanning from West Mississippi River Regional Trail in Brooklyn Park to Lake Rebecca Park Reserve in Greenfield. The long-range planning process will be a multi-phase initiative as it allows for more thoughtful route analysis and team engagement. So we are focusing on the first phase of this process, which is from the Brooklyn Boulevard Blue Line Light Rail Transit Station in Brooklyn Park to the Lake Independence Regional Trail in Corcoran. And you can see that portion highlighted there in yellow. Completing this first phase and the consecutive phases of the long-range plan really allows us to transition from a search corridor to an improved route and improved our competitiveness on grants and coordination with other projects. So as Marge mentioned, this takes a long time, and this just helps us kind of get it off on the right foot. Thank you. So this first phase will roughly be a year-long process. It might be a little bit over based on schedules and community engagement, etc. But as you can see in this map, and I believe you all have received a larger version of it in front of you, we have a handful of route options for after we've done a few windshield tours with our consultant and our regional trail manager. There are some routes that provide more of a linking trail experience, such as those along County Roads 30, 10, and 50. And then there are other routes, there are just a couple, that provide more of a destination trail experience, either Jubert Lake or Strailer Road, which would require additional right-of-way maybe a little bit more engagement, working with community members, etc. As I mentioned, today we would love to know whether these types of trails fit within the parameters of the needs and wishes of the City Council and Parks Commission. As we engage community members and refine these routes, we will continue to check in along the way and ultimately make sure you are brought in the loop as we refine and narrow down our options. But we want to make sure if there are concerns or questions, we know that before we put it into the plan and solidify it. This slide just shows a few examples of regional trail amenities. I'm sure many of you have seen these already, but it's a good refresher, and it definitely signifies our trails and that Three Rivers experience. So there's rest stops, the wayfinding and fix-it bike repair station. As you can see, the trail with the dotted line. This is our tentative process and schedule. So as I mentioned, we're kicking off here in spring 2026. We wanted to check in with you all, make sure that you are on board, that you could see a couple route options and get your initial feedback. Throughout the summer, we will be engaging your community members. We would like to bring a few different routes to them to provide some feedback on based on what they would like the trail to connect to for community destinations, etc. Over the winter, we will kind of refine the route and make sure that it both is possible technically, but also follows what we heard based on engagement. And then in the spring and summer, we would likely come back to you all to request a resolution of support and make sure that you're on board with the finalized plan. We wanted to include this today because I know that there are some routes on the map that are a bit more vague. They might go through some farmland, etc. But really, this can be as long as 10 to 30 years before we're able to implement the whole trail. We kicked off our regional trail system plan in 2020. Now we're at the long-range plan step here. In the next year or so, we'll create a cooperative agreement with your city, and then over the next 10 to 30 years, we'll really be completing the regional trail in segments. We'll be securing funding, partnering with cities and you guys, and other cities and developers, and acquiring and constructing as we receive funding along the way. So we just want to make sure that everyone knows we're not in the business of eminent domain and all of those sorts of things. We really want to work with community members and you all to make sure this trail is built. And so we're just trying to get ahead of development rather than taking anyone's land or anything of that nature. We have our engagement ideas here. In general, we do a project website. We'll host a lot of online surveys, virtual or in-person open houses and meetings. We do a lot of pop-up engagement and attendance at community events, and then direct mailings or newsletters if we see fit. And then lastly, listening sessions or activities with underrepresented groups as well. We have some specific events listed here for Corcoran. We would love to get any feedback on these if you feel like it's not appropriate or you should definitely go to that one, or if we're missing anything else.
Mr. Mayor, can I jump in here real quick?
Sure.
While Bark in the Park, I hope, is a lot more successful than it's been in the past with our new park and stuff like that, is there a way to add Night to Unite first week in August?
It's under the already.
Is it already up there?
It is.
I was
Yeah, no, that's great.
I was down below Summerfest. I'm like, late August, but nope, it's there. Never mind. I didn't say anything.
Yeah, we've heard really great things about your Night to Unite event, so.
A few people show up for that.
Great. All right, we can go to the next one. These are just some pictures or visuals of how we've engaged community members in the past through signs along the corridor, you know, different listening sessions that we're recruiting people for in other languages, workshops.
mind if I jump in?
Events, et cetera. Yeah, go for it.
So some of you may remember some of the listening sessions and the engagement opportunities from the Diamond Lake Regional Trail. It was around the time of COVID, so it was kind of a little wonky. We did it kind of on the north side of City Hall with some tables set up. We had a few people show up. I think you guys sent out mailers to get people within the area to come out and really voice their opinions. So I will say Three Rivers does a pretty good job about getting the community involved and trying to hear back from people. Probably because sometimes there's some misconceptions with a trail overlay, and to be very clear, that doesn't necessarily mean it is going right there. Just to reiterate that so that people don't get upset.
Yeah, that's great, thank you. Yeah, and ultimately, we want the trail to go where community members want it to go, as long as it's feasible, and the city agrees. That's the whole point of providing a regional trail to a certain community. And then we have our last slide here. These are just some initial considerations. We thought we would provide some questions we get often, just for discussion purposes, if anyone is interested in, sharing any concerns, wanting to talk about your priorities or goals and how that might align or not. Any routes or destinations that you want us to consider or maybe avoid, especially after looking at the map, and anything we could collaborate with as we work through this initial phase of the project.
I could start with one, and I've talked to Marge about this before and a few other people with your team. I think it would potentially be cool synergy to have it go through our city park, where the Diamond Lake Trail will also be going through there.
Yeah.
It'd be a pretty cool crossing there.
Great, thank you for that feedback. We've heard that from city staff as well, and even the folks at Three Rivers who worked on the Diamond Lake Regional Trail long range plan, they also thought that would be good synergy.
Awesome.
So.
And as a reminder, that was anticipated to be a trailhead for the Diamond Lake Regional Trail, and it sounded like it was going to get the top tier of the wayfinding and amenities that comes with. So, kind of a 2-for-1.
There's been some discussions too about potentially having it come through the new civic campus, so that would get access to some people that they can get near the trail, and that might activate the campus for stuff as it goes right through city center. I just wanted to
Which
mention
would
that.
maybe be that last segment of H on the map.
Yeah, it's the purple one.
Yeah.
Yep.
Roughly around there, yeah.
Where does that one proceed west along?
The
Is that
purple
envisioned?
route.
Yeah, the purple one. It connects to basically through Rush Creek Reserve, but it doesn't show the route from there. Would that go into City Park and then one of the other routes out of the park?
Yes, yes. I believe the purple route just takes a little bit of a different route through Maple Grove. It's through a neighborhood rather than using some existing sidewalk trails.
Okay.
Yeah.
Having some experience with other regional trails, I really appreciate the Medicine Lake Trail and how off the beaten path it feels, even though it is still pretty close to a lot of neighborhoods because it's got that nice broad greenway corridor that it's within. So I would tend to favor paths like, I would say, alignment F, where you might be able to create some of that, but potentially the one that goes down by Jubert as well, although I would imagine it'll be harder to get land in that area. And if we end up building Starlight Park, Marge, in the more rural parts of the city, alignment F would be a good way to get direct access within that trail, and then you can go straight from there over to Rebecca.
This way it's probably easier to put the trail on these major roads like 50 or 30. But then obviously you have a straight trail that goes right through, right?
Yes.
Okay, so that's more or less why we have those. Like, yeah, we can always go down these major roads if we want.
Yeah, it is a little bit easier. We would classify that usually as a linking trail.
Yeah.
It's not maybe as much about like the natural resource corridor.
Just to
Yeah,
get here
yeah,
and
yeah,
there. Like,
from here to there, which is still important, but
And there might be opportunities that are coming as they're upgrading some of the county roads. So for example, County Road 10 is doing a feasibility study, and one of the initial drafts shows the alignment of a trail adjacent to County Road 10. So if we were to not have this trail there, that would give us access with 2 trails, rather than doubling up traffic on one and then not having the great experience. So you could have one that's a transportation corridor along the county road, and then still have the experience that Councilmember Nichols was alluding to.
Mayor? Okay. Quick question, on the trail that runs along 116, which is the existing on-road trail. I actually live on 116, and I know that trail very well, and I wouldn't even call that a trail, I would call that a shoulder, not a trail. There was actually someone that was hit on that road right in front of my house last year. So I would say that that's not really an appropriate place for people to be walking, maybe
Okay.
biking.
Okay.
And then there are people that I have seen walking, but like maybe only 1 or 2. And it
Okay.
always makes me nervous because if someone's not paying attention when they're driving, there's no room. It's like a very small shoulder.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
I have a follow-up question on that. So, would you ever do an on-road trail for any of these? So even if let's say we did straight down County Road 30, that would still be more substantial trail, correct?
Yes, it would be off-road. We don't do on-road
Yep,
trails,
okay,
yeah.
got it.
For safety reasons.
Is that marked as an on-road trail anywhere, or is it just for this map purposes? On 116?
That's a good question.
Okay.
I can double check. Our consultant put this together.
Okay,
Yeah, and I can double check where, I believe we use some city data to
And
put
I'm
this
trying to
together,
think if
but I
it's in
don't
ours.
know if maybe they took some liberties of
Yeah.
adding some data or whatnot. So
Okay.
I'll double check on that, yeah.
For me, it's also important where we plan on kind of putting open space parks in the future, or putting like sports areas. So I think, for me, looking at kind of our long-range plan and seeing which of these might also activate connections to those parks
Yeah.
in there. So I think both kind of the ones in the center or a little south, those all kind of go by pretty key areas for us as far as putting areas. So I think that, for me, too, helps if they can help activate some other future parks too.
Question?
Yeah.
We don't happen to have an overlay of our town.
Not on hand, but we might be able to make one.
That was one of the things I didn't have pulled up, I'm sorry.
I could describe it like between the yellow and the blue, there's those 2 lakes. So there's gonna be open space park there, and then like a sports area just north of it. So like, even in between those 2 paths shown here, either of them would get you at least close to those.
Where were you talking about? Gary?
So if you look, I don't know what I'm describing, path A and the blue path F on the west side. Let me see.
I don't have an overlay per se, but I do have the map.
Yeah, so you've got those 2 ponds or lakes right above where it says 2 ponds. There's supposed to be an open space park area identified potentially around there. If you go north of that just slightly, that's an athletic area. So that's one area that either of those 2 center ones would easily connect to. And then the other 2 areas are like a little north and to the west of those. So I think, I see some advantages to the, what is alignment F, hitting that area to the south around those ponds, and then kind of to the northwest as well, 2 target areas.
You're
those
talking
ones.
here.
Yeah,
So there and here.
yeah. So you'd have, on the west side, North Park's on there, and then in the kind of middle of the map, you'd have some to the south of that trail.
That's good information to have. We'll definitely coordinate with Jessica as we go along and talk through those pieces.
Send that over.
Yeah.
principle in general. Is this a trail that people are going to be on to get somewhere, or is it a trail that people are going to be on to enjoy the day?
That's a good question. It could be either, it could be both, and, or either
Certainly
or,
it
you know.
would be both, but
Yeah.
if it's, you know, if it's on the county road, then it's used instead of taking your car somewhere. And if it's through the natural area, then it's a place that you go just kind of get away from having to go somewhere.
Yeah. You know, and it depends, I think most of our regional trails are predominantly used for recreation.
Okay.
However, the alternative transportation system is growing, and I think with more east-west and north-south connections, now it's easier to get places faster. And so that is also a purpose and a reason why we do what we do. However, who's to say, you know, you can't do both? You know, maybe you want to get from point A to point B, but you want a nice experience while you're doing it. I just think it depends, you know, also what community destinations the trail connects to. That will also kind of determine what people are using it for.
And that would be part of our process,
Yes.
was find those important
Yeah.
spots.
Yeah.
I have to ask the obvious. This trailer road,
Yes.
what are you thinking on that?
You know, I think that was just kind of a guidance point because we had been able to drive down that a little bit. This to us felt more like a natural resource corridor. So it might not necessarily be on the road. It could be, you know, a little bit north, a little bit south. That we would start to determine as we go through route analysis. But it would take you to like Independence Regional Trail regardless.
Through the farmyards?
Yes,
If not,
because they're both on the north and the south side of them.
Huh?
we're not gonna condemn them.
Well, it doesn't matter. How in the hell are you gonna put a farm, a trailer there when you got cows and tractors and
You have to wait.
That's why it's a 30-year plan.
It's the future, Judy.
Play dodge the
I'm
best.
just saying, you know,
Yeah.
you guys
No,
got,
we
got some
totally
vision. We got some
understand.
bird watchers
Yeah.
now that are causing some problems,
Oh,
so.
okay, yeah. I think, no, that is a very valid concern, and that's why it is such a long-range plan.
Okay.
Yeah, and you don't wanna go across Judy's property.
Not very good mind, just
My,
observant.
my big one, and Judy and I are out in the same general area and such like, and things like that. Concerns that I have right now, the Three Rivers Trail along 19, people don't use it, they're riding bikes in the road.
Yep.
What can Three Rivers do to correct that? I tried to, I asked them, why are you on the road when you got a bituminous path right there? And they, who the heck are you to tell me where I could ride, where I can't ride? My last thing is, I don't want any of them hit.
Yeah.
So, the main roads, those kind of things, you guys know this, but we aren't doing anything to stop those things. I'm so worried, people getting hurt and such. Looks like I shook somebody else out of that. Thank you. I love them. I love all the parks. To get to 19 is great, to go north-south down to Baker, up to Hassan, travel out further west to get to Rebecca, all of those things. It's great to see this. And the Medicine Lake Trail and such, that was a big deal when I lived in Maple Grove 40 years ago, and it just got done how long ago? And that, I was part of starting that when I was over there. So this is really cool. I'd rather not use county roads because people don't use the trails when they're next to county roads. So the safety aspect, I'm worried about that.
Councilmember, I think you are incredibly astute, and it's something that we also notice and track data on. That trail is absolutely more of a linking trail about getting from A to B. we also have observed that there are a lot more bicyclists in the roadway than we would
Yeah.
expect given the trail. What we've noticed is many of the bicyclists in the roadway are a different type of bicyclist in general. They're not young bikers or recreation, they're fitness,
I've
training.
stopped the same family 3 times, 3 different occasions,
That surprises me.
with a trailer on the back of the
Yeah.
bike and an infant in it, and they're riding on the road instead of the,
Yeah, I can't speak to that.
I'm doing everything I can to do it, I have no idea what could happen, but my gosh,
I
you
would-
just can't fix that, can you?
No, I would imagine most recreation bicyclists, family bikers, anyone with a mobility disability
Yeah.
are going to choose the off-road option.
And then even those folks, well, then I have to stop for the stop sign. If I stay on the road,
Yeah.
everybody has to yield for me, and when I grew up riding bike, I was told to stop at an intersection,
Yes.
get off your bike and walk it across.
Yeah.
Nobody does that. The book and rules have changed, so I absolutely love this. To Judy's point, to go through all of those farms and all of those things, that's gonna be a long time coming, because the intention of a lot of those folks that own that property and stuff is to continue farming until
After you're talking
something
about
better comes along. So,
Route F?
thanks.
Dean,
Yep,
are you talking about on Route F?
any one of
Or
them.
any road.
Okay.
I mean, I can shoot holes in all of them, but I just, the pedestrian safety is really big, and it's gonna be, I don't want them along County Road, but that's probably the easiest easement you can get. And if it goes there, how do you prevent them from riding in the roads? So, very cool.
I've got a question about flexibility, and the heart of this question kind of ties to what Councilmember Varenkamp was alluding to, that sometimes there's strategic opportunities that emerge, and then it becomes really clear that the plan that you had, that dog ain't gonna hunt. And so, we are also at some point gonna discuss the potential of the regional park here in Corcoran, and it would make a lot of sense if the east-west goes through that park. But I also understand, as we've talked, that's a later conversation. And so my question is, flexibility in order to move it north-south and stuff, because I've experienced with the Diamond Lake that we've had some flexibility. What degree of flexibility will there be in the agreement based upon, you've heard some of these folks won't farm, we thought it might go through there, and it makes a lot more sense that we move it a mile south, because that's where we have an opportunity to actually make it happen.
You're absolutely spot on. Ultimately, what we're doing right now is putting a more defined line on the map, but that line is still opportunity-based. And so we have one neighbor where we would need an easement or some type of collaboration says, no, never gonna happen, go away. But the neighbor to the north or south or east or west says, hey, I'm actually interested, I'll give you an easement, I'll sell you an easement, whatever the case may be. Then we move the trail to where that opportunity is. As Maggie mentioned in her presentation, we're really not interested in doing eminent domain, nor are we in a position that we could use that tool without council support. So I would assume that you guys are not super jazzed about using that tool either, so we're on the same page. If we don't use that tool, then we have to have a lot of flexibility about where that line goes on the map. And the line on the map really just shows more of the intent that this is an off-phase or an off-road section of the trail, or this is a not on-road, but parallel to a road corridor or segment. And we've had on the Diamond Lake, as property gets developed, we thought we would be here, and then we're getting moved over east or moved over west. And as long as our staff and your staff are constantly working together and bringing us in with those development concepts, that flexibility works really well. And to your staff's credit, they have done an exceptional job working with developers to carve out open space and figure out how the regional trail is going to fit in there, so that ultimately a lot of the segments of the Diamond Lake Regional Trail are going to feel like the Medicine Lake Regional Trail once it's all done and pieced together. In the meantime, trees are going to be small. They were farm fields. I'd like to think there's gonna be a lot of farm fields in Corcoran for a long time, but I think any one of us can drive in this city and see the houses that are coming, at least on the east end, and we wanna be ahead of that and work in partnership with those development opportunities. And then thinking more towards the west, that could be where we're at that 30-year plus mark, where it takes us a lot longer to assemble that land, and that's okay. Three Rivers has been around a long time and will be around for a long time, so we aren't here to push something when the community is not ready. We're really looking to just start figuring out how we want to work together and where that opportunity is.
Thank you. Any other questions, or did you have more?
Nope, that's it for me.
Any other questions
Yeah,
for us, or
no.
for the
I don't think I have any other questions, but if you all have questions, and you think of them later after this conversation, please feel free to reach out. Jessica has my contact information. I'm sure it's also located on.
Your guys' website, I'm sure.
I would just reiterate, if we could find a way to, I think there's a lot of different options that could maybe work, or, or adjust on the 2/3
Yes.
your part. If we can find a way to then come together, get through into our Heritage Park, and then potentially, as Jay mentioned, to City Center area. If we get those two, then I think there's a lot of different options we can hit to try to.
A lot of different
Get to that point
directions,
there.
yeah.
Okay, that's great. That's great feedback.
Awesome.
Yeah, thank you. Appreciate it.
Jessica, could you bring their questions up just to make sure that we haven't missed any of the questions that they're hoping to get feedback on from council? Thanks. So the first one, any concerns from the council with proceeding? From the commission? Okay. As far as priorities, you've heard some. Does the commission have any feedback as well? Is there any considerations or priorities, goals that the commission would want to highlight here?
I'll just add that a priority, I like the idea of going down the south, just because you're passing, three lakes along the way. It's always nice when you're on a trail to come upon, oh, look at where I am now. It's a nice lake, get a nice view, all that stuff. So my secondary priority after connecting to park would be to try to make your way down south.
Any others from council?
If you could have the option of working with Northwest Trail Snowmobile Club too, a wintertime option, I think is part of our heritage and such, so it just, there was conversations about that at one point, so. And that's a great group of men and women.
I know you've done some wider too, so you have joint use, not just snowmobiles in the winter, but then also horses adjacent. And then there's also concerns about horses having them near
Yeah, the
pedestrians.
horses and bikes don't
Yeah.
work, so.
And so I just throw that up as something I've seen in some Three River spaces.
Yeah.
Anything that they should avoid?
I don't think at this point.
Eminent domain.
Well, yeah.
Eminent domain, please, no.
I know where there's a really nice 115-year-old mortise and tenon barn, that would be a neat trailhead. But we can talk offline
Where's the
about that.
schoolhouse in relation to?
It's
There's
along
a
County Road 10.
schoolhouse.
Okay, so that was maybe one that.
So the northern route, the blue route there would go right past the schoolhouse.
But
The light blue.
the county's gonna be doing.
So fun update, actually connected the county with the school, and they're talking about some potential programming
Neat.
collaboration this summer. So thank you for that conversation that has recently started.
I think it's important that we don't, we choose one of these, doesn't mean we don't or can't put another trail on some of these other paths as is, right? If we want to connect to the schoolhouse or other ones, it doesn't mean we won't, just means it won't be part of the, that
Yeah.
Three Rivers one.
Might be-
I think.
It might be later, or depending on how far away something is, cost increases and stuff, but certainly at some point could.
There are a lot of planned trails in the comprehensive plan.
So we talked about a couple opportunities to collaborate with the school. Are there any others that they should be taking into consideration?
Do we talk with one of the last dairy farms in Hennepin County? Is that a collaboration opportunity?
Potentially, we could reach out to
Potentially, two dairy farms in Corcoran.
Yeah,
We could
One of
Dan
them
and
in
I
the
could reach
south
out
and
to
one
him
more
and
towards
see
the
if that'd be something they'd
northern
be
portion.
interested.
Yeah. That also has been alluded to, sometimes cows and people don't mix so well, so maybe you don't want, yeah. You don't want them playing bossy bingo.
I'd rather watch them run.
And then the last question has to do with community engagement expectations and ideas. They threw out some potential calendar opportunities. Are there any others that they should consider?
I think you hit the big ones.
If Heidi's doing Oktoberfest, that can be another
Yeah.
good one.
that'd be another good one.
Yeah, that's a good idea.
Is there any, obviously I didn't read that very well. Is there any opportunities related to the Lions events?
Yeah, they had the rodeo and
Rodeo was there,
Yeah.
and then Corcoran Country, or excuse me,
Yes.
Country Days. Okay,
If we're doing anything around City Park opening, that could be another one.
Hmm,
Yeah.
That's a
Call.
great suggestion.
Call.
are we gonna open that this year?
I'm sorry?
City Park?
Well, I also think an opportunity to celebrate that section of Diamond Lake that has
Yeah.
been done, that would be a way to highlight that. That's a great suggestion.
That's a great idea.
And Justin and I have touched base a little bit about doing some pop-ups during sports, so I think it was soccer and baseball. Yeah,
Nice.
gather some family feedback.
Tractor pulls and demo derbies are a little loud, might not be so great, like they're usually there for an experience, not loitering to have conversation so
Yeah.
much, but those are our opportunities,
Okay.
4 of them in the community.
Great.
Can I just ask, are there any community groups that we should make sure that we touch base with?
Lions and JCs might be good.
Lions, JCs, yeah.
Do you have any senior citizen groups or, that kind of?
Meet with St. Therese, see if they've got
Yeah,
something.
St. Therese might. In the future, we probably will, but probably not for a bit, but we can fill you in when that does come.
The church communities really become
Yeah.
gathering points
Hope
within the
Church.
community. So Hope and St. Thomas and
St.
St.
Thomas will
John's.
be doing their new site
Those
too.
become the largest potential
And
collective.
St. Thomas has, there's a festival in the summer, right?
Yes,
So
they do have a
it's
festival.
It's usually around August 18th.
There's a lot that happens in August.
Yes.
Yeah, it's very busy in Corcoran.
It's like every weekend.
It's a great place to be.
Best time in here.
And the stanchion does some things adjacent to some of these activities that also might be a great place to set up where you're gonna get a different kind of foot traffic,
Yes.
some different feedback.
Great. This is really great feedback. Thank you all.
Thank you. Anything else on this item?
You wanted to get a picture,
Yes.
Aaron, for us to stay on schedule. We probably should move to the atrium. Want to get a
Let's have
large group
everyone,
picture with the commission and the council and the Three Rivers
Three
folks?
River staff and commission, head up to the Again? Just taking my notes here, and then I'll turn it back over to JCB.
Green means go, right? All right. So switching over to the second half of our agenda for the work session, we've got Gabrielle Grindy here from HKGI. You probably recognize her. She's been working a lot with us on the Heritage Park project. Tonight she is here to talk about wayfinding. So that was the signage discussion that we've had a few times, as well as a parks and trails plan. So I'll hand it off to her. She'll go through the slides, but if you have questions as she's going through them, don't hesitate to ask. I imagine we'll probably go through first the wayfinding part and then the parks and trails plan. Sound good? Wonderful.
Yep.
All you, Gabby. You can either sit or stand, dealer's choice.
I'll sit.
It's not live yet.
There we go.
Okay. All right, hello, everyone. Let's see. Okay, so we'll talk about the wayfinding plan first. So we've put together a scope for that, and the Parks and Trails plan, Jess and I have been talking about what that could look like, but we don't have a solidified scope. So here to get your input tonight on what you'd like to see in that. So for the wayfinding plan, we're looking at providing standardized sign template for parks, trails, and open spaces. So there's 2 tasks to this project, and we don't have a schedule, but it could last, we talked about a couple months, 2 to 3 months ideally. So the first task, we would look at sign precedents. So what are types of signs in the community or around the area that staff have seen that they want to look at that would represent the types of signs we're looking for. And then inventory what the existing signs are, what needs to be replaced, and what's already out there in terms of regulatory signs that will be staying for the foreseeable future. And then talk about what the overall deliverables and goals are. And then the second task would be developing the concepts. So that's where we're developing the types of signs. We talked about 4 types of signs. We'd meet with the Park Commission to go over those concepts and get feedback, and then present the final sign concepts with cost estimates to staff. So these are some examples of sign standards or templates that we've designed for other communities. On the upper left-hand side are some signs for Otsego. So we worked with the city branding and graphic designer with the city to develop the look and feel, the font sizes, the colors, the icons that are on the sign. We developed the materials and the sizing and scale, and we did a few renderings to show city staff and park commissioners what those might look like, and then came up with a final family of sign templates. The ones on the right were for Wright County. That was a similar type process where we went through a few iterations of monument signs, wayfinding signs. On the bottom, you can see some single post signs. So the city already has regulatory signs, which we would use as a starting point for the look and feel, and then develop the other types of signs from there. And then the bottom left, that was a project we did for the city of Farmington, where we did some renderings of signs that would be in their downtown and then also at the entrances to the city. So, any questions on wayfinding?
Any preferences towards anything specifically? I mean, since we have all of the important people making decisions in the same room?
This isn't a particular issue, or particular design preference. You know, you kind of shrug my shoulders, not my thing, but we need to, I think, have a time lapse of showing that sign over the next 20 years. Because you look at signs kind of anywhere and they just look so ratty. And that in general, a sign which is not as expensive, but we can afford to replace every few years is really, I think, something to seriously consider. So that as parks change, as they develop, we're not stuck with a bunch of old signs that are faded out. It gets to be a serious issue for people who don't know where they're at.
Yeah, wooden signs look great for the first year, and then they fade, and they split, and they rot, and they crack. I agree.
And some of those composite signs sitting out baking in the sun, they have their own appearance.
Bleach really quick.
I think a timeless appeal would be good, and whatever we end up with. Are there any ancient Roman park signs that still exist that we could copy?
That's a
I
good
mean,
question.
are you guys sending me to Rome to see?
Sending you to Google to see.
We're sending you somewhere.
Google Maps?
Got a good VR headset you can fly right in and check it out that way.
That's there.
Yeah, that's a good point. We can look at some signs that are old and see how they look and base the preference for precedence and materials on what lasts longest and is timeless.
Say no offense to the city of Farmington, but in 10, 20 years, those are probably gonna be out of style. If not already. No offense to Farmington. I like the upper left sign, if you're looking for a specific sign. I know the wood will fade, but if we get some nice seated posts, those last a while.
Yeah, we had a long conversation at Seago Park Commission about whether those would be wood or composite. They went with wood.
Is there a composite that looks like wood, or maybe some stone?
Yeah,
or-
composite is coming along. I mean, since it first came out, there are new iterations of it that look more like a weathered wood, but yeah, it's up to preference, maybe the maintenance staff preference.
So now we're switching gears.
All right, so the next project we've been discussing is a Parks and Trails plan. In some communities, we call this a park system plan, Parks, Trails, Open Space, master plan, goes by many different names. But the goal is to take a comprehensive look at the city, at all the parks, trails, and open spaces existing and future. Typical time horizon is 10 to 20 years, so you're looking at what are short-term goals for the park system in the next 1 to 5 years, what could be medium-term, mid-term in the next 5 to 10 years, and then longer-term vision projects would be 10 years plus. So we've talked about a few different time horizons, so looking to get a little bit of input here on what the goals are for this. But generally, we talked about 5 phases or tasks. So the first phase would be looking at the existing park system, inventorying what exists today, and then what is planned. So where anticipated growth is and new developments, where there are potential new parks and trails. So you already have the Three Rivers Park Trails that have planned corridors, so looking at where those could be and identifying that in a map and talking about what the timeline is.
Would likely look similar to something like this.
Yes.
And so, in that same regard, it can kind of go hand in hand with a comp plan in many instances. Just something to tie it into, as we are looking at kicking that off in the foreseeable future.
The next phase we've discussed is public engagement, and so depending on the community, we've done this in a number of different ways. In this instance, we've talked about the city leading the public engagement process. So when we've led public engagement, we've done online surveys, pop-up meetings, open houses, meeting with stakeholder groups. There's also needs assessment that could go along with that, which looks at peer communities, what do other communities offer, what do private recreation and recreation associations offer that complement your system because you don't want to duplicate what's already out there. And then there's also national metrics that you can look at. The National Recreation and Parks Association has metrics. So that could be part of that same task if that's of interest. The third task listed here is goals. So that's identifying broadly what are the goals. We talked a little bit about identifying what current obligations are. So what the city is already committed to doing in terms of parks and trails, in terms of new neighborhoods that haven't maybe fully got all their facilities installed or constructed. We've talked about projects funding, and so where does funding come from, aligning the funding with those projects. and then having a system vision plan. So this would be more in line with the comprehensive plan. A lot of times when we've done Parks and Trails system plans for communities in the metro area, we will create an executive summary, and then that would be the chapter that would go into the comprehensive plan that's required for the Met Council. The fourth phase listed here is a short-term action plan asset management tool. So asset management is something actually that at HKGI we've been doing, we've been evolving for the past 10 years or so as a separate tool. It could be an Excel spreadsheet, or it could be incorporated with a GIS system as part of the city data, and it identifies where all the projects are, what the timeline is for them, what the lifespan is, what the cost is, where the funding comes from. So it's really a comprehensive data tool that can be used to project your CIP, you know, how you get projects accomplished, and we've found that a lot of communities are more interested in that tool than anything else, almost. So we've been really evolving that to be more of a GIS data tool. So the projects listed there would be projects that could go into that tool. And then the implementation phase would be taking all of what we had learned for the first 4 phases, and then identifying what those short-term priorities are, what the phasing is, you know, steps to get projects accomplished in terms of preliminary design, final design, bidding, construction, looking at all the funding options and sources. We've done a tool called the project review process, where we look at what the city strategic plan is, comprehensive goals and vision, and identify a set of, like a checklist that a city has to go through to agree on implementing a project. We also have a template for a project request that we put in a lot of park system plans, where if somebody from the community requests a project that has to do with parks and trails, or any project in the city really, you can give them this form, and they have to identify, does this project meet the city's vision, does it meet strategic goals, where would the funding come from, how would it be maintained. So it's really just a set of items that you need to check off to identify a project as moving forward. And then the last bullet there is capital operations and maintenance costs. So that's something that we keep an updated list of parks and trails projects and items that are related to bidding. So every year when we bid projects, we'll update that just to get a feel for how much things cost generally. So we can.
Yeah, when we, back in the early 2000s, when we started with a natural resources inventory to highlight those parts of Corcoran which were of special interest. And that, of course, has changed in the last 20 years because somebody's cut down trees, or you know, the drainage has changed. There's been some development there. But it seems like if we're looking to, that an update of that might be really helpful, or at least we should, I think, consider that. Then, if we look at the existing Parks and Trails plan, it was designed for, not to be forever, but until, as Corcoran grew, we would fill in more of those spots, especially the neighborhood parks and such. So you can, if we start with existing parks, that's really good. But then to reevaluate some planned parks, I think we should be, at this point, more development, adding some new neighborhood park search sites, review neighborhood parks, or we drew a circle, or everybody should live within a 10-minute walk, a half mile of a neighborhood park, and then extend that into the future for the next 20 years. To do that would be, I think, a real appropriate and necessary thing to do. And there were some open space parks where that's not going to happen now. The land is not really available anymore, and so on. So we would update, adding some spots, and then also taking off some spots that the game has changed.
think also as Corcoran develops in waves, having target areas, almost with a timeline. It's like when I look at the comp plan, we're kind of entering a zone where now there's kind of a gap in where will be developed next. There's not really parks identified, and then it's not until later that there's more. So I think also, bringing in the timing of things as well and options as the community develops to sync up. Not bias it towards now or in the way of the future, but have options along the way that we can kind of react to.
One thing I'd like to focus on is what is the primary objective of the document and how is it different from what we put into the comp plan? What I think we could really benefit from most is a document that helps us get new parks off the ground sooner. So when we get a new neighborhood that comes in, there's going to be a park in that neighborhood, or we've acquired land someplace. How do we get to the point where we can start construction on a park that has desirable amenities within 6 months of having that land identified and the funding has come in? We've, I think, made really good progress on Heritage Park in the last year. I would love to have the ability to do that kind of work at a smaller scale faster. So is there a way we can focus this document on what is the process by which we collect feedback, we identify what are the amenities that are going to go into this park, we create some designs and route it through the commissions in an efficient but expedited way so that we can mitigate this issue of, we collect $5 million in park dedication funding, but we don't know how to spend it in an efficient way.
I think a small part of that might be getting a good inventory as we build some of these other neighborhood parks out and open space parks or whatever, of what amenities we have where, so that, some things we're gonna wanna duplicate or have something similar in each park, maybe a small playground or something like that. But if there's a different type of unique amenity here, probably the nearest future parks around there don't want to have that identical amenity.
So their own flavor?
Know what you're doing so you can kind of spread it out.
There might be an opportunity, and philosophically, we're kind of dipping our toe in it. So with St. Therese Phase 2, if you recall, we're talking about rather than collecting those park dedication dollars, there's an opportunity in order to put that burden of actually executing the construction on the developer. The benefit of that is you still get the input, you still get the control of what's going to happen there, but then it's constructed rather than trying to do it after the fact. So the challenge with doing it after the fact is now people have moved into the community and they have all of their own different dreams on what that park might be. And oftentimes, as I had conversations, some people are disappointed. I didn't get what I wanted. He got what he wanted. That stinks. I don't like this park. Very different if the park's already built when you move in. Now I feel great. It's my park. And when I was in Shakopee, we shifted to that philosophy for development of new parks. And it gets you that flash to bang so that you're able to execute because you're putting that burden of responsibility. You still maintain control of what the outcome's going to be, but you're putting the burden of execution on the developer. And then that also oftentimes reduces your costs because they've got the dirt movers, they've got the construction people, they have all of the concrete people. They have them on site.
Well, and if they're doing it up front, it's not waiting a year or 2 years where it's going to get more expensive.
And they get economy of scale in terms of what they're constructing. So you can get more bang for your buck rather than coming in after the fact. And anytime you got to move equipment on site, there's costs with that. But if you already have the equipment on site, you gain some efficiency and it lowers your overhead.
How does that work if somebody comes in with a proposal that is to code, there's not a PUD? Can you still construct the agreement in such a way to get that to happen?
I would have to default to Natalie, and unfortunately, I think she's online, but that we'd have to get back to you on the mechanics of it. What I can communicate is it's happening in other communities, and so we could check in with them and see whether it's only tied to a PUD or whether they're putting it in with the development agreements. Have they put that in their ordinances? I don't recall. I just remember we were talking about this frustration where especially gets frustrating, and this is what can happen with the regional trail. You have a gap, and you can never get it because you have a NIMBY person that says, not in my backyard, I never want that there. so you're never able to make that connection. It's really horrible when you do that to a neighborhood. And so now the neighborhood is outside of your planned, all your trail connections, because somebody doesn't want to participate. But if you can get all of the stakeholders and make it happen at the front end, now all those people have buy-in because it was there. We've had that conversation in Bellwether with trails, in which it was on people's plans, they knew it when they bought the houses, and they were frustrated after the fact when we went to construct it, because they're like, well, this isn't what I imagined. You forego all of that if it's there when they move in.
And then there's the dog park, which was on the drawing, but not on the plan.
Yeah, and who's adding to the drawing? I just had that conversation, I was in Bellwether today. People have different expectations, and they're like, when are you gonna build this? And I'm like, we haven't even had the conversation yet about what's gonna happen in Bellwether. We haven't started the public engagement yet, so back up. But if that had been built before they moved into Bellwether, they'd be happy that they have whatever's there.
That could be a good opportunity too, to like, look at all the parks and decide like what you want the parks to be. Like, do you want a basketball hoop at this one? Do you want something else at a different one? But then you're more balanced too in what you have at different parks. So all the parks aren't the same.
Almost like a menu.
Yeah.
And then you have the orders from the previous parks available to you, so it's easy to cross-compare. Yeah.
It'd be great if the staff can come back on the PUD question. My guess would be that we may or may not have the authority to require them to do it without a PUD, but we could still probably ask them to do it, and I think many would probably.
We would likely have to pay them back, if not a PUD, depending on final costs.
Pay them back if it went over the park dedication amount?
Stand by, I'm sure she'll type.
Yeah. So I'll reach out to Shakopee too and see how they're including that. Because the reality is we were saying, this is what we'd like. We had meetings with the developers, and to your point, it was like, okay, we want these kind of amenities here because we don't have them anyplace else. We're trying to do something unique in this park. And then it's built before they move in. In fact, there was one out by Jackson Township in which the park was built before the houses were built. That was a whole different look. You have this playground and there's no homes yet.
When it solves the
Makes
issue.
community engagement easier when there's no community yet.
Well, and like parks and trails could look at it and say, okay, this was a biking trail, so it makes sense to have this type of park at the end of this
Right.
trail versus having like a toddler park or something. You could gear it towards whatever you wanted it to be.
And the residents who are around a park when it's built are not representative of the life cycle of that neighborhood, too. So you might
One park.
be just as well off to take the whole city's feedback, what do we want to see in our parks in general, and make sure that's represented, versus trying to get feedback from, these 100 homes about what this specific park should be.
Developers liked it too, because it's a lot easier to sell a vision that's already built.
Yeah.
Like, this is what it's gonna
It's like
look
when
like.
they
your
put their
family
maps
lives
out of the
here.
developments, they always have a hypothetical park that they draw on there. It's never actually that, and then, I know I've got
And then
plenty
there's
calls in the
tension.
past, why isn't that built? I was just showing that it could go there. I don't like it.
But if you move in and it's there, like,
Right.
from the moment you go to see the house for the first time, it's like, oh, the park's right there. I can imagine my kids going over there to play.
Right.
As opposed to, I'm looking at that dirt clod over there someday when my kids are in high school and they're not toddlers anymore, because that's how long it takes to get through the process.
But that's what this document is for, so it doesn't take long to get through the process.
I got a question. Have we ever had a development come that's not a PUD?
Yes.
Yeah, several lately.
But just recently, yeah.
But they still have park dedication fees.
Yeah.
And we can't add that to the park dedication fee of this or?
In our ordinance?
I think that's part of what I'd like to see,
Yep.
is spell out what's the playbook for a PUD? How do we get a park quickly? What's the playbook for a per code?
Per code,
How do we
bang,
get it done
bang,
quickly?
got
I
it.
can dig into that.
I like it.
Other cities have done.
Natalie was
Figure it out.
rifling off a bunch of messages there, just being.
We don't need to know tonight, but just as long as we get some It's
I'm
Anything
just hoping I
that
can
we
give
need
a
to know
direct
about?
quote, and there's nothing in here, because I haven't
She's
read them
not
yet.
yelling at us, is she?
No, we
Don't
would
say
have to likely reimburse for anything above their park dedication amount because they get credit for the land cost. Unusual for a development to provide land and cover all the costs to develop the park land in their park dedication fee.
So we were using the park dedication fee as the budget for the park. That's how you didn't end up with overruns. And then there's a conscious decision. So if their park dedication for a particular development through all of its phases is going to be 800,000, then that's how much you have for the total budget for the park.
And
If you
not
only-
every neighborhood's gonna have a park, you know, so that's where you have maybe some built up in your park dedication fund. They do the land and some of it, and then there's overage, that's where you use the other park dedication money you have built up on it.
It's also
Jay?
true that sometimes the neighborhood will have like tackle park, and so you will put it in a spot where the next development in this area then will finish that park.
You mean like a half a swing and a half of
Yes.
a teeter totter and a half
One
of a
train.
merry-go-round?
Right.
One That'd be fun.
There's a
Cars
big
are-
fence there, you're not allowed to.
Half a slide, but not this way.
Yeah.
It's this way.
I have a quick question. So if they only used 600,000 in your example for the park, the other 200,000 would stay in the park dedication fee then?
Correct.
Okay.
But we didn't have, like, usually it was like, awesome, we still have this much to go, and so what else can we add? So those were some of the collaborative conversations, because they did have some cost savings on some things. And so I remember, like, we weren't planning on doing musical instruments. Oh, let's add that as a station, because it was an engagement opportunity that wasn't super expensive. So I just phoned a friend, the community development director, Shakti. I was like, how do you do it? Trying to get your
Yeah.
questions, so
Thank you.
we'll follow up.
Perfect. Sounds good.
So I had some other exhibits for each of these phases. This is an example of an inventory, so identifying all of the facilities and park by park, and then the map of all the facilities.
Do you also, one question here, do you also look at maybe neighboring cities too? Any questions around like unique amenities?
Yeah.
It might be helpful to also know, for instance, there's not a skate park around in the next section of, like, so I think,
Yep.
maybe we can do that outside of this effort, but I think that's also
Yeah.
helpful information as we decide any specialized parks that might be
Yep.
beneficial.
But there's 18 pickleball courts
Right.
across.
Yeah, so we don't put them right on the border.
Yeah, that would be a peer comparison if we were to do that as part of a needs assessment. Yeah. And then this is another example of a map showing where all the parks are, parks and trails. And then this is an example of a needs assessment summary with the recommendations by different categories. So for this project, this was for the Stearns County Parks, Trails, and Open Space Plan. We looked at all the different data sources for the inventory conditions and needs assessment. So previous planning documents that apply demographics, how the community is growing, trends in recreation, conditions assessment. So we analyzed the condition of all their existing facilities. We did a peer comparison. So we looked at other comparable counties. We looked at distribution. So how close were the population areas to various facilities, and then public input. And then on the right side, that's the categories that we use to make recommendations. So each of those categories had recommendations associated with them.
You did your homework.
And then this is an example of the goals. So we identified, this was for Wright County, I believe. So we identified for each recommendation what role Wright County Parks would have, and then who the partners and collaborators would be to accomplish a project. And then these are some examples of that asset management tool that I talked about. So at the bottom, this was a guide that we gave the city of Farmington because we did an asset management tool. So we showed them how to use the spreadsheet. So there are many tabs. Each tab had different categories of information, and then there was an overall summary tab that showed in 2025 you'll need this much money to accomplish all the projects you've identified, 2026, and then they could move projects around to accomplish the number of projects for the funding that they had. And if the number of projects was more funding than they had, then they would have to reassociate those projects to different years.
And this factored in things that had to be replaced as well as new amenities, correct?
Yes, yep.
Because as we continue to move forward, let's not forget that Wildflower Park is 8 years old at this point.
Yeah, so one thing that we've been working with a lot of communities recently is playgrounds, because the price of playgrounds has risen astronomically, and playgrounds typically last 20 to 25 years, and so when you're looking at 20 years out to replace a playground, that comes up sooner than you think, and you might not have the money needed at that time to build the same size and scale playground that was already there. So communities are looking at different types of play features, nature play features, or just providing open space and trails as opposed to playgrounds in every single neighborhood park. So that's just one example.
On that spreadsheet, are you able to modify, like, would we be able to modify, I see it says complex, or is that something you could help us tailor to, like, specific needs that we have on that spreadsheet?
Yep. Yeah, we've designed, it's not the exact same for every community. So like in Farmington, they wanted us to identify all the staffing. And so we had staffing, but we don't always include, how many hours of staff time it would take to maintain these projects. So we can get very detailed or keep it more high level. But we have included compounded inflation, yes, in these. And when we did the Farmington one, that was when inflation was at 7%. And so we were trying to decide over the next 20 years, should we have compounded inflation at 7%, but I think we did 7%, and then the next year we did 5%, and then we put it back down to 3%, so that they could look out 10 to 20 years and see maybe a $100,000 playground, what that would cost in 20 years. And then this is an example of, this was in the executive summary for the Stearns County Parks System Plan, where we looked at what are all the short-term projects in the next few years, what are the midterm projects, and then the long-term projects, which are more visionary ideas that would need more planning and funding associated with them.
Questions? Everyone's really quiet now.
I'm not sure we're ready for some of this.
Which ones do you not feel you're ready for? Because
Well,
that's kind of the point of this, is what
Yeah.
are you looking for?
I mean, I was kind of seeing it as more narrowly focused on developing parks versus how do we support and sustain the parks that we have. And I think if we could maybe separate those two into maybe phase 1 and phase 2, I feel like we still want to get projects done near term, and this could be helpful in doing those. The support could maybe follow on as a separate phase.
So the ideal is to get that process developed for how to accomplish the projects over the next couple of years that we have, and how do we get those done quickly?
Yeah. That's my perspective. Of course, I'm only one voice.
Did you say something?
Not really.
So with timely response, I did phone a friend, and he is timely. And so he said in reflection, having the developers build the parks has actually been more expensive because cities can get better pricing than a regular developer can, so you get more bang for your buck. And so while they were doing that while I was there, since I left, they started to pivot away from it.
Interesting.
So
Interesting.
I recant all of my
Well, I think part of your recommendation still stands, building it early in the development process. Just
and
the
I think
agent might
involving
be
them in
different.
dirt work and stuff, and getting
Yeah,
at least the
there's some
groundwork.
stuff
So,
Yeah.
he said primarily the PUD didn't work so great, but they have continued to do it a lot earlier in the process. And then we also get the tax exemption, which helps us in terms of our buying power. So there's, they were doing it that way, and they pivoted away because you get more bang for your buck, and you got more control if you keep the keys.
9% off sales tax?
I think Jason B. raised a good point, like if they could we could figure out a way where they do some of the we have a design, they do some of the earthwork, some of the, maybe even trails or whatever, and when it comes to like buying equipment and other, you know, concrete for a basketball court or whatever, maybe that's what we're doing, but they could be doing some of the earthwork and stuff like that when they're already out there doing the whole site.
Anything else?
I have a question on that. So we get the savings because we're the nonprofit, but couldn't we essentially hire them as the park builder? Right, so it'd be just like we would normally do and go out and find a park builder, but we're hiring them. Because they have an incentive to get that park done as well to help sell their homes. So we'd probably get better pricing as well. Right?
Potentially if they cooperate.
Right, yeah, obviously.
I think the Bellwether Boardwalk would be an example of how that is taking a lot longer than we hoped it would.
Yeah. Well, they already have their houses built, a lot of them, so they want to get out, is my assumption.
Now, I will note, there has been some progress on that boardwalk. I was out there earlier this week. There are posts in the ground. There are some horizontal boards too.
So I was out there this morning and I
Kevin
talked to
is
the
doing
crews.
work.
Yeah. So
Kevin's probably out there laying the boards himself.
So I talked to the crews this morning to ask when they thought it was going to get done, and it is progressing, but the weather right now is so unpredictable, it's messing it up. So I don't want to speak too disparagingly, but the
There's been
collaborative
progress.
effort.
It depends on the builder and
Yeah.
the level of cooperation.
To collaborate in mutually beneficial ways could save us a lot of money.
So this is the final slide. So we figured we'd get through this and then we can kind of summarize what we've heard and kind of the route that sounds like we maybe move forward towards. And obviously, so the wayfinding plan scope is within the regular meeting after this, under consent. So if it matches what everyone is envisioning, great. It can be approved then or denied then or pulled. The parks and trails plan or whatever rendition of it is landed on would come back later. So this is a big chance to get feedback on both of those, and if the wayfinding doesn't match, we can come back to a different meeting with it. If this doesn't match for your parks and trails plan, we can audible and shift. So whatever feedback you guys have, we are happy to hear it.
Anyway. Bueller.
So I would say, to consolidate the feedback I've already given, looking at this slide, under goals for the second topic, I would keep, identify current obligations and what the existing parks that we plan to build are. I would probably leave the citywide parks and trail system vision to the comp plan and not develop that, maybe copy what's in the comp plan. And then lighting project with funding, what is the ballpark we expect to have to spend for what we intend to build now? And then add a goal to develop playbooks for the Parks and Trails Commission and the council to use to expedite future park planning and construction.
When you say playbook, I just want to make sure that we're headed down the right road. Is it kind of a general playbook towards any park that comes in, or is it like the neighborhood park that's located in Tavera needs to be developed? Are you looking for like a concept plan so that we could hit the ground, know what the costs are?
What I was thinking of, not that that's a bad suggestion, this is the general flow that we would follow. So first step is developer is coming in with a project that's going to give us park dedication, land we're going to build something on. So because of that, this is what the Parks and Trails Commission discusses when they review the proposal. And this is the menu they look at to pick the amenities for that park that they would like to propose. And then this is what council does with that when they're reviewing. And then if it ends up going through, after the money comes in, wherever those steps are going to be, like what is the actual process we intend to follow to make it go relatively quickly, give people all the information that they need to make good decisions, and we end up with a built park at a sooner time frame.
Can I ask a follow-up question?
Please do.
I think that would work as we get more parks that are coming in and more development as it comes in. My concern is how does that address the parks that need to be developed now if we're coming partway through?
So you're kind of skipping ahead in that case, right? Because
Mhm.
you've already approved it, you have the land, you have the dollars, or at least a portion of the dollars. So I would imagine you're just starting middle of that process. So what does the park board do to identify what are we gonna put in the Tavera Park?
I think that's where that menu / list of other nearby parks and what amenities they have would be helpful, so that we're not duplicating. We don't wanna have like an identical park in Wildflower and Tavera.
Mhm.
We don't wanna have some, maybe there's a
Disc
small
golf in
playground.
every park.
Yeah, sure. Disc
Horse
golf
trails.
is, yeah.
Horse trails in every park.
Or even
Um,
general examples of budget, because if we know what we have to work with, is that enough to build what we want, might be
Mhm.
helpful.
Yeah.
Just a, like, example, so we know.
Basketball courts cost
Yeah.
X,
Yeah.
Bike
tennis
racks.
courts cost Y.
Because we have like Wildflower is a small scale and Heritage is the large scale, so anywhere in between we can use kind of the logic that was used to build both of those to create more of that decision tree and that logical flow that just simplifies it.
I think one of the things that Jessica's bringing up is this, we have parallel routes. So we have the way that we want to do it, and then we have some cleanup work to do.
Yeah.
That I don't think is gonna be as simple as just creating a plan and then hopping in here. Because some of them are in different stages, and the biggest challenge for them, because we have a future park, if we were to use that philosophy, that becomes the budget. If we were to do that scopes it out. I'm not saying that we have to do it. But right now, we have obligations without enough resources to meet all of the demand. And so we have to come up with a playbook to meet that immediate sense of obligations. Because we have some residents, I was just in Bellwether this morning, that are very interested in what are these bodies doing to plan, how to resolve that, and how do they put it for their own expectation management on a timeline. And also for expectation management, everything between there, between Heritage Park and Wildflower Park, and an OSP that doesn't have anything in it, where does their neighborhood park or their adjacent park land? Those are hard ones that won't fit in that flow, because that flow talks about money that we'll get someday that we'll do with it. We got this much money, and if we don't resolve that, we're gonna continue to get park dedication that, hey, thanks, part of this neighborhood park that's coming in now, we need to catch up
Right.
with these other ones.
I think you summarized that really well. To put it kind of bluntly, we're a lean staff, that's something that's repeated very frequently, and I have no plan to follow. So I'm trying to give you guys everything that you want, but without having kind of some course of action. I think we find ourselves in a waiting pattern
Yeah.
almost.
Is the primary thing that you're missing prioritization of
Yeah.
projects or a
I
method
think-
to follow?
That's part of it. I mean, what is the prioritization? And does that depend on budget? Does that depend on what we have in Park Dead? Does that depend on what came in first? I think there's a lot of factors that go into that, but no real.
So maybe we should have that as a council topic. How do we prioritize
Yeah, I
these
think we
projects?
should. And maybe even a survey ahead of time between councils.
Well, I think even dialogue right now, I mean, this is a unique opportunity in which we have the council and the commission, and right now to have a conversation in terms of the commission being able to share with the council feedback that you're getting, and so that council can then, in those discussions, help. Is that fair? Like, they're in that column for, there are 5 current obligations that we have. The linear park, we have a subset of that that's gonna help deal with a section of the linear park. But there's still a lot of other linear park obligations.
But that's also a lot in the future, because it requires a lot of land to develop that hasn't developed yet.
Yeah, we've got a section right in front of this location.
Yep.
And then we've had the site in front of St. Therese, so that will start to address that one. But with those obligations, and then I've heard from people from Tavera and Bellwether, and then also OSPs, You know, so there's a lot of different ways to prioritize it, is to, how do we check them off? Does everybody get something? Do we knock them out one at a time?
Generally, my preference would be to get a unique, you know, one or two unique amenities to these parks that we need to catch up on before we complete the park necessarily. So that there is something, 'cause the biggest complaints I get is that there's nothing for the kids to do in whatever neighborhood. And if you gave basketball court and a small playground or whatever the two amenities are, or three amenities, it gives something to tide over, a different unique amenity if they wanted to travel over to another park nearby. That's, I think, a good start. We get Bellwether and other ones finished or started, and then when we go back, we finish those off with whatever else we have planned for.
Because that also helps her understand how to prioritize opportunities to chase funding. Because if we know that we need to get this one accomplished, so something that the mayor and I have been talking about is there's some potential funding out there for the veteran community. And that came up during discussion during the open house. And so I got a phone call. I had no idea there's 40 veterans that are meeting in Bellwether once a month. Because we don't have a VFW in American Legion, so they kind of created their own, so to speak. So I had coffee with them this morning because they were like, hey, we want you to hear about this. And what I had to say to them was, we have an idea that we'd like to do something for veterans, but we need to get some clarity. And they started throwing up, well, what if we help pay for it? I was like, I like the way you're thinking.
Yeah, I mean, we're open also.
But to know what we're gonna pay for, you know, that requires the planning, the getting out there, the scoping.
I think it's a fair topic, for just to give the commission, I don't think we've answered that clearly, or had approached that question, what would you just prioritize? And I can give my feedback now, but I think all of us could get together and give that, if that's a priority piece, I think. And I can give my feedback on what order I would put in and why.
Want to put that on a future agenda?
Which one?
You mean, which agenda?
So Mayor and Council, would you prefer that the commission
Which is
provide their perspective on how they're perceiving priorities? Or would you prefer that council provide guidance to the commission on your priorities? There's a difference in process.
Yeah.
And then that changes how things are going. I just heard from commissioners that they'd like to get together and provide some feedback to the council.
Yeah, I would like to hear from them. You know, they put a lot of time
Thank you.
into reviewing this, certainly more time than I can dedicate. So I think it makes sense, at least in my opinion, for them to get together, figure out what are the priorities for them, and then I think we should listen to what they have to say.
That's really helpful for them, because then that makes it clear their role.
And there may be things that have to change based on other
Right,
factors
sure.
that we have to take into account,
Yep.
but it'll be a good starting point, I think, so.
And so what we can do then in terms of timing is JCB can get that on an agenda for them, and then that we can get the follow-up meeting from that Parks and Trails Commission meeting to council following that.
Cool.
And that will be really helpful, because then we're getting the grassroots feedback for you to make some decisions. They're helping bracket it. Because as you alluded to, Councilmember Nichols, like, it's this wide. And we have this much capacity. And so how do we identify the target that we want so we can knock it down when we shoot at it?
Right.
And being a big commission, you know, the more feedback you can get from your neighbors and friends of what they think to bring that into that meeting, I think the better, so we're getting a more representative. What's that?
Nothing. I was listening and thinking.
You
This is
said
my
it.
thinking face, Mayor.
Okay.
For transparency, I did look across the room at Seth to see if we can make next week even maybe work. We'll do what we can. The packet was done, but now it might not be.
If you can, great. If not, the following one's fine.
Yeah, but then we have to wait a whole nother month.
I like the way you're thinking.
Yeah, like,
Hey, if you can get
I'd
it
rather
done,
have a late
fantastic.
night tonight than punt for a month.
Okay,
Strike when the iron's
fine
hot.
by us.
Have you met the community development team? We like a good late night work.
And then, go for it.
So, Mayor and Council, to help her out with these other things, as I understand, as column 4 becomes the priority, and you provided some guidance, is there anything building on what Councilmember Nichols said about goals? We put some of them on the process for the comp plan. There is the potential to get a twofer in this, like if we lean forward, it's still gonna feed into the comp plan. So, what I'm saying is it might seem like semantics. Like, we're still gonna do that, but what they're alluding to is do it now, and what I heard you say is wait until we get going in the comp plan. Is that fair?
Or start with what's in the comp plan and refine it, so that it maybe is a little bit smoother,
Are we
faster
still-
process.
Sorry to interrupt, you done?
Yeah.
I just had a thought in it. Are we still going out for the Hennepin County Youth Sports Grants? How have we been?
Like the playground
Just a-
park one?
Yeah.
No, because I don't have any park plans other than the one.
So if we
that
get
we're
some of this going, could we start?
I think, so that was kind of why I asked about the concept plans versus like general other feedback we've received. I think it's easier to go after a grant like that when you have a concept plan, because you can say, hey, here's what we're thinking, we have a more concrete, viable
So we get our
idea.
priorities and maybe we could work on one of a general layout.
Well, and if we have a priority, then we know what the next one is, and then we can kind of have a real plan, but without having a plan,
Okay. It's just something to keep in mind when time
Mhm.
comes. I think that's a really good source, and
we've had good luck.
Kevin Anderson keeps encouraging me and other mayors to keep going for it, so.
And that would
That would
be
keep going
an
forward.
argument in favor of Tavera, because you could get funding for that park, but maybe not for the Veterans Park, which would have a different funding source.
Or a different programming agenda. So, I mean, there's different ways to frame it, so it might be a both and.
And we have gambling funds as well that might be able to use some at parks.
In the Minnesota Department of Veterans Affairs.
While we have everyone here, is that something one of you guys want to touch on? I don't know that the Parks and Trails Commission knows
The gambling
about-
fund?
the Veterans Park part of that.
Jay, if you wanna.
Yeah, so what's been discussed is, how do we activate the gambling funds that we have and use them to benefit, because they keep coming in, and rather than allowing them to accumulate, you know, if we had, we're targeting this, I wanna buy that cool car, then you keep building it up. We don't have a clear identified project or priority for those funds, and so something that as we were looking at the different ways that you can spend those funds, it's very clear that you can spend them on veterans projects. And
There's a
so
lot of
one of the
fun-
ideas.
Any youth activities as well.
And then for some of the youth
snowmobiles
activities.
and all sorts of stuff.
And so we're talking about funding streams. Is there a way for us to spend gambling dollars to tick off some of the priorities? For example, in Bellwether, if that were to become a veterans park, there's enough money there to build a shelter. And so you do a nice shelter leveraging gambling funds rather than spending more dedication funds. And those sorts of opportunities. There's potentially some Minnesota Department of Veteran Affairs grants, and there's some other veteran adjacent ones, just like there's some with youth sports. And so we don't have a veteran space, and with that not having any veteran service organizations here, we're in a unique spot. I had this idea, JCB and I even talked about it before, but I was having, kitchen table conversations with onesies and twosies, locals, about their service and how do we do that. This was the first time, I had no idea that there was a group gathering of 40 veterans in Bellwether, and they're highly motivated to do something because they have some discretionary time on their hands.
And just quick correction, charitable gambling funds is what we're talking about,
Yes.
not
Yes,
just the
thank you.
gambling funds.
Yeah, charitable gambling.
We got nothing going on the side, folks.
That might be another group for Three Rivers, the group you're talking about in Bellwether, just to have a discussion.
Yes. So was there any questions about that? There's no, it came up, we're trying to figure out, the mayor and I were talking about how can we spend that money down, because council had asked me, how do we come forward with some proposals to prioritize this? And that was one that we're like, okay, okay, this is a target of opportunity. If we were to do something for veterans, where does it make sense? And then I heard, oh, there's this large group of veterans in Bellwether. I was like, oh, if we can spend down the bill to do something in Bellwether, that might be really helpful.
Then a little bit more history too. The last 2 years, we did help historical preservation as part of those charitable gambling. We did help shore up the Birchfield School. So,
Should be good for them.
To the tune of $85,000.
Any
well
other,
spent. Neat place. If nobody's ever been there, get there, please.
Very
Good place.
any other final thoughts? I know we went a little over on time, but we don't often get everyone in the same room like
No,
this.
appreciate you guys all coming today. Great.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for volunteering, very much.
All right, if there's nothing else, I will entertain a motion to adjourn.
I'll make that motion.
Second.
All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye.